You know what's strange about people who stay broke their entire lives? It's almost never the people you'd expect. We imagine someone who can't get ahead as lazy, careless, someone who just doesn't work hard enough or doesn't want it badly enough. We picture someone sitting around doing nothing while everyone else builds a life. But psychology paints a completely different picture. Some of the people who stay broke the longest are the ones working the hardest, hustling the most, thinking about money almost every single hour of the day. They're not lazy. They're exhausted. And here's the part nobody tells you. Staying broke isn't really about how much money comes in. It's about how the brain is wired to process scarcity, stress, and survival. And that wiring quietly sabotages every attempt to climb out. Stay with me because what I'm about to show you will completely change how you see money. And you might recognize yourself somewhere in here in a way that's uncomfortable. These are the psychological patterns found in people who stay broke their whole life. 1. They are always putting out fires. The first pattern sounds obvious until you understand what it does to the brain. People who stay broke live in a constant state of emergency. There's always a bill that's overdue, a payment that's about to bounce, a crisis that needs handling right now. And because of that, their attention is permanently locked onto this week, this problem, this fire. Researchers who study scarcity call this tunneling. When your mind is consumed by an urgent lack, it narrows like a tunnel, and everything outside the immediate emergency goes dark. The future disappears. Planning becomes impossible, not because they're incapable of it, but because the brain under scarcity literally cannot hold the future and the emergency at the same time. And here's the cruel part. Tunneling feels like focus. It feels productive. It feels like you're handling things. But you're only ever handling the symptom, never the cause. You spend your whole life bailing water out of the boat and never once fixing the hole. That's exhausting, and it's invisible, because from the inside, it just feels like survival. 2. Money doesn't stay in their hands, and it's not because they're reckless. Here's something fascinating. For many people who stay broke, money creates a quiet, almost physical discomfort. When cash sits in the account, it feels unstable, like it's already promised to something, like it's burning. So they spend it. Not on anything huge, a small treat, a meal out, something that gives a moment of relief. And here's what's really happening underneath. Studies on chronic stress show that when people live under constant financial pressure, the brain craves immediate relief just to regulate the anxiety. A small purchase delivers a tiny hit of control in a life that feels out of control. It's not greed, it's medication. The problem is the relief lasts minutes, and the consequence lasts months. The brain learns to associate having money with the pressure of holding it, and spending with the sweet release of letting it go. So the money evaporates, again and again, and they genuinely don't understand where it went. But the brain knows exactly where it went. It went toward feeling okay for a moment. 3. They think in dollars, never in systems. People who stay broke tend to process money one transaction at a time. This costs $40. I have 80. I can afford it. Their entire financial world is a series of disconnected single moments. What they don't see is the system, the pattern, the machine running underneath all those small choices. Research on financial behavior shows that people who build wealth think in structures, automatic transfers, recurring flows. What happens 100 times a year? While people who stay broke think in isolated events. And this is where it gets interesting because the broke brain isn't worse at math. It's stuck at the wrong altitude. It's standing on the ground counting individual coins while the wealthy mind is in the air watching the river. You cannot redirect a river you can't see. So they win tiny battles, this purchase, that deal, this discount, and lose the entire war without ever realizing a war was being fought. 4. They are always waiting to feel ready. This one is quiet but deadly. The person who stays broke almost always has a plan, the side business, the course they'll take, the budget they'll start. But it's always starting next month, next paycheck, when things calm down, when they feel motivated. Psychologists call this present bias, the brain's tendency to massively overvalue right now and discount the future into a blur. To a brain under stress, future you barely exists. That person is a stranger, so why sacrifice for a stranger? And here's the trap. They mistake the feeling of motivation for the requirement to begin. They wait to feel ready, but readiness never comes because Readiness is not a feeling that arrives. It's a thing you manufacture by starting. So the plan stays a plan. It sits there, perfect and untouched, for years, and they comfort themselves with the idea that they'll do it eventually. Eventually is where dreams go to quietly die. 5. They protect their ego instead of their bank account. Here's something that sounds backward. Many people who stay broke avoid looking at their own money. They don't check the balance. They don't open the bills. They let the statements pile up unopened because seeing the number makes the anxiety real. It feels like self-protection. But what they're really protecting is the ego, not the wallet. Avoidance shields you from the discomfort of the truth, and the price of that comfort is staying blind to your own situation. And you cannot fix what you refuse to look at. The wealthy brain runs toward the uncomfortable number because information is power. The broke brain runs away from it because information is pain. Same number, two completely opposite reflexes, and those reflexes decide a life. 6. They believe wealth is for other people. This is the deepest one, and it hides underneath everything else. People who stay broke often carry an unconscious belief that money, real money, belongs to a different kind of person. Smarter people, luckier people, people born into it, people not like them. They never say it out loud. They might not even know they believe it. But it shows up in how quickly they talk themselves out of opportunities, how they shrink in rooms with successful people, how they self-sabotage right at the edge of progress. Psychologists call a version of this learned helplessness, when repeated failure teaches the mind that effort doesn't change outcomes, so it stops truly trying. If your brain has decided that wealth isn't available to someone like you, it will quietly steer you away from every door before you even reach for the handle, and it will feel like realism. It will feel like just knowing your place. But it isn't truth. It's a scar pretending to be a fact. 7. They confuse being busy with building something. People who stay broke are often astonishingly busy, always working, always hustling, always moving. And they wear that exhaustion like proof. Look how hard I'm trying. But here's the uncomfortable question. Busy doing what? Activity and progress feel identical from the inside, but they are not the same thing. You can run on a treadmill for 10 years and cover 1,000 miles and end up exactly where you started. Building wealth requires a specific kind of effort, the kind that compounds, the kind that creates an asset that keeps working after you stop. But the broke brain, trapped in survival mode, can only afford the kind of work that pays today. Every hour is sold for immediate cash because immediate cash is the emergency. So they trade time for money forever and never once buy back their own time. They are busy, genuinely busy, building absolutely nothing they get to keep. Now let's talk about what all of this actually means. Because when you line these 7 patterns up, look closely. Not a single one of them is about being lazy. Not one is about being stupid. Not one is about not wanting it enough. Tunneling, spending for relief, present bias, avoidance, learned helplessness. These are not character flaws. They are survival adaptations. Here's the truth almost nobody says out loud. Every one of these patterns is something the brain developed to survive being broke. When you live in chronic scarcity, focusing only on the emergency keeps you alive. Spending for relief keeps you sane. Not looking at the number protects you from despair. These responses are intelligent. They work for survival. And that is exactly the trap. The very patterns that help you survive poverty are the same patterns that keep you trapped inside it. The survival brain and the wealth brain want 2 completely different things. One says, get through today. The other says, build for a decade from now. And you cannot run both at the same time. This is why willpower alone almost never works, and why telling a struggling person to just try harder is so cruel and so useless. They're not failing to escape a maze. They're running the exact program their environment installed in them. And that program was written for survival, not for freedom. So, if you saw yourself in these 7 patterns, hear me clearly. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are not destined to stay where you are. Your brain adapted to keep you alive under pressure, and it did its job. But a program can be rewritten. Not through willpower, that's the lie. Through systems. Through making the future automatic so you don't have to feel ready. Through forcing yourself to look at the uncomfortable number until it loses its power over you. Through building one single thing that keeps working after you stop. You don't need to become a different person. You need to give your survival brain a sense of safety so it finally stops tunneling, and let the part of you that can see the river take the wheel. And if these patterns felt foreign to you, if money has always come easily, understand that the person struggling next to you isn't weak. They're running a harder program than you ever had to. A little compassion goes further than any lecture. The difference between staying broke and breaking free was never really about money. It was always about which version of your mind is holding the steering wheel. So which patterns did you recognize in yourself? Be honest. Drop it in the comments because naming it is the first step to rewriting it. And if you want more deep dives into the psychology behind why we do what we do with money, ambition, and the mind, hit subscribe. Because understanding how your brain works isn't about judging yourself. It's about finally working with it instead of against it. And that might be the most valuable skill you ever build.